Thanks for being here and listening to me. I'm going to talk to, so actually I should, something I didn't mention during my intro. I'm a part-time teacher at the old Ryerson, now called Toronto Metropolitan University. So I'm going to talk about a book that we adopted in the entrepreneurship department a couple of years ago as one of the kind of many things that we try to instill in our students. So this is one of the more, I think this is it's been a couple of years since we started doing this, and I find it to be a really powerful concept, and it's quite simple. So I can pretty well explain an entire book in 15 minutes, I think. We'll see. So I usually take a little bit longer in class because I've got 3 hours to fill. But anyway, I have to warn you, there will be a couple of swear words. They won't be words you've never heard, and there won't be too many. But there's a couple. So if that's going to trigger you, you might want to leave the room. Okay.
Copy of that slide, that might fit.
I'll happily share my slides with anybody that wants them. I have to start though by recognizing somebody. And I got to try to tell this story quick because I've only got 15 minutes. I was 27 years old, and it was my very first management job. I was giving performance reviews to my staff who were all technologists. So I was a technologist, then I went in the training group for a year or two, and then I became a manager of technologists. My buddy Greg here, he competed for the same job, and I got it. But he was my best tech. We were friends. Well, we were friends through the whole thing. It was a little strained when I first took over as his boss, but it's very important for you to understand that Greg was a very good performer. He was my top tech. I had a huge amount of respect for him. So it's my very first time giving performance reviews. And I gave him a great review because he was a great tech and a very, very reliable guy. And so I wish I had a piece of paper to illustrate. I'll just use one of these. So you have to pretend this is 8.5 by 11. So I said, at the end of his review, I said, okay, Greg, that's you, right? You're done. Now, review me. And he said, are you sure, Brad? And I said, oh yeah, I want to hear, I respect you. I want to hear what you got to say. Are you sure? And I was asked 3 times if I was sure, but I was sure. So I said, yes, please review me. He goes, okay, you're a fucking tyrant. And I was like, whoa, that I'm not expecting. That was not the manager I wanted to be. It was not the vision that I had of myself. But I'm here with somebody I have a huge amount of respect for. I've got to listen to this. And I changed as a result of that. The next year I checked in with him, and he was quite satisfied with the changes that I had made in my demeanor, right? So, there's very few people who would tell their boss that they're an effing tyrant. Greg was practicing radical candor 30 years before the book came out. And so when I came across this concept, I just embraced it with open arms. Comes out of this book by this lady, Kim Scott. She's not an academic, although she's been a part-time teacher like me, but I don't consider myself an academic, even though I work at a university. I'm a practitioner. And, you can see where she's worked. I don't read slides, She worked at Apple, she's worked at Google. She's got a very good pedigree and has had some fairly senior jobs there. And I'm not going to tell you her stories. You can look at her TED Talk or whatever if you want to hear those. But she had a Greg Cannell moment herself. And I guess that's, that was the catalyst. But she just tells lots of stories about kind of what happened throughout her career and when she practiced radical candor and when it was practiced on her. Okay, so what is this thing? Well, basically, it's a bullshit-free zone. We tell the truth, but we do it in a human way. It's not about hurting people's feelings. It's about telling them the things that they probably don't want to hear but need to hear. So the question is, how do you do it? So I thought I killed these slides. Oh, okay, I guess I left one of them in. Anyway, but the whole idea is to avoid this. Why are you telling me this now during my performance review? If somebody finds out bad stuff during their performance review, you're a bad manager. It's that simple, right? They shouldn't have to only find out once a year how they're doing, especially if they're not doing that great. Those are the people that you probably need to spend a bit more time with. So, what does it look like? Well, in the entrepreneurship world, we love these things called canvases. We've got lean canvases, we've got business model canvases, we've got value proposition canvases, and now we have a radical candor canvas. So, and it's also a 2x2 matrix, which is one of the most powerful management tools that there is. So, yeah, it's the intersection of caring a lot and being willing to challenge people. So, another way to look at that is you give a shit and you're willing to piss people off. So the confluence of those two is what we call radical candor. This is the best quadrant to be in. This is the kind of manager all of us should try to be. If you don't care, but you're willing to challenge people, you're an asshole. But guess what? That's the second best thing to be as a manager. If I have to choose between you care about me or you'll tell me how it is, I'll take the telling me how it is. And that is called in the book obnoxious aggression. So these are people that they don't really care that much about you, but they're at least willing to be honest. So like I say, that's kind of the second best place to live. Then there's the bottom left quadrant. Why would you even have these people in your company? Like, why are they employed by you? If you're their manager, why are you keeping them? Either try to move them to another quadrant or just get rid of them. And then there's the quadrant where most managers live. Most managers will not tell the truth. My nicest boss ever, a guy named Paul, back when I worked at Telesat Canada many moons ago, this was him. I worked for him for almost 2 years. I never did anything wrong. That doesn't help you grow. You know, you're going to grow by being told the areas where you could improve. And there was just nothing that Brad could possibly do to be better. So, nice fellow, but not the greatest manager, you know? And unfortunately, that's the quadrant where most managers live. So, okay, so how do you do it? Well, stab people right in the front. Right? So, anyway, the way to do it is there's a great acronym, right? HIP. So, it's humble and helpful. It's not mean. You know, we're trying to preserve people's self-esteem to the maximum extent possible. Otherwise, you're just working at cross purposes to yourself. So beating somebody up to the point that their self-esteem is blown apart is not the way to turn them into a great performer. It should be immediate and in person. So nobody wants to hear that what they did 3 weeks ago was not the greatest thing to do. I mean, if you're going to praise somebody, I guess doing that late is okay. It's not great. But if you're going to criticize somebody, you have to do that very immediately. And then the last thing is P. So if it's criticism, do it in private. And if it's praise, of course, do it in public. Kind of like that book from many moons ago called The 1 Minute Manager. Ken Blanchard talked about catching people doing things right. So, and then celebrating in public. So it's not my box. So, one, I've already mentioned that, the first point here. So the second thing is give people a voice. You may be simply wrong about what you think about their performance or something they did or what have you. So give them at least an opportunity to make their case. And you may actually then back off a little bit on your position. And then, and I think this is just, number 3 is just really good management practice in general. And, you know, one of the things that I do is I meditate every day. And the reason I started doing that is because I was becoming not the nicest person. And so what meditating does is it allows you to really take a step back and kind of be outside yourself, but viewing yourself and taking stock of yourself. So I think that's a great thing to do. And then the other thing is, you know, it's more about trying to push people toward doing the right thing than it is about telling them all the wrong things. So if there's a so here's one of the little things from the book, but the author's talking about a time when her boss she was doing a very high level presentation. She thought it went really well. Their business unit was doing really great, and so she was after the presentation. She's talking to her boss, and she said, "Well, that went really great, didn't it?" The boss said, "Yeah, it went pretty good." And something else was said. The boss was again like kind of non-committal, and so then eventually Kim, the author, says, "Well, what's up? Like, what's wrong?" She said, "Well, Kim, you said I'm a lot." And Kim's like, "Oh yeah, well, like that's just kind of how I am, blah 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 blah." And the boss is like, "No, no, no, like you really said it a lot." And Kim's like, "Oh yeah, whatever. That's me, People just that's my style." And then the boss says, "No, no, Kim, you're not listening to me. Let me tell you so you understand. When you say I'm a lot, you sound stupid. Not you are stupid, but it makes you sound stupid." And, that's as far as I think I would go with criticism. But the thing is, the boss was trying to guide her and it wasn't working. So eventually she had to bring out the hammer. And then the last thing is, try to focus on behaviors, actions, not the person. Like, focus on what they've done. Okay. And then the other thing is, sometimes you do have to hurt people's feelings a little bit to get through. It's not your goal. It's not the default position by any means, but sometimes it's necessary. So I still have you want to pay for time, right? Yeah. Oh, done. So anyway, so the idea is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to push people down. We're not trying to crash them. We're trying to build something here, right? What you're trying to do is build a world-class team, whatever it is that you're doing, and that's the goal. That's what you want to try to convey to people when you're practicing radical candor. And the other thing is, you've got to be prepared to receive it yourself. So don't practice this on your staff, but not be willing to listen to them. Like Greg with me, the fellow with the beard that I showed you. So anyway, that's radical candor in 10 minutes.
Hi, everybody. So I picked a topic that I had to advise, which I picked taking action during uncertain times. But and then I've just been thinking about it as I was preparing, and then I also realized, what I really mean by the title "Taking Action During Uncertain Times." I mean, it's taking action during uncertain times for leaders, right? So I'm really speaking to people that are a leader or want to be a leader. And I've had the good fortune of being working in the position of usually the general manager position, which I like to say is emphasis on general, meaning virtually every problem comes to the general manager. You're responsible for all the departments, and people are looking to you for answers, right? And so the really the message that I wanted to share with you guys is when you're put in a position of leadership, lead, right? That's your job, is to be a leader. Your job's not to be doing everything, everything better than everything else. Your job's not to be a place to put all the monkeys on your back, right? And the best sign of a leader is helping people to keep the monkey on their back and helping them to do the job, right? So I think this one's really appropriate right now for the rapidly changing economy that's happening, especially I'm seeing it in my business a lot right now and over the years. I've had to start over. I've lost, basically lost everything. I had to start over and, rebuild a business and sold the business. And, but in that time, many things have happened, which required me to take action. And, it wasn't until I got older and whatever that I realized that, that's really what separates a lot of the successful people, is taking the action during uncertain times rather than freezing, right? And so these are just some of the key points. And, I can give you some examples. Really, the the examples of what I did are more demonstrative of what I was trying to get across. But the bottom line is that when you're the leader, you're responsible and you're accountable. And if you're not accountable, if you're not responsible and accountable, you have to be both, right? And someone can't make you accountable for something but not be responsible, right? You're responsible for the results, but the people don't report to you or that kind of a thing. That can't be. If someone wants you accountable to something, you have to demand the responsibility, right? And like I said, don't freeze, right? And you have to realize, only you can change the situation, and that's what people are looking for you. They want someone to follow, and pretty much, without fail, if you are in that position and you make proper decisions, you make decisions, and you commit to them, people will follow you because most people are looking for someone to follow, right? And they really are. And so when uncertain times come along, you have to change the way you look at things, right? So, we'd started a business in 2007. It grew pretty much like a linear progression, from 2007 to 2019. And there's all sorts of mistakes and things we made along the way. But what happened was we took some of our successes and we patted ourselves on the back, and we thought, well, we can do these things too now, right? Like, we're successful in wireless and selling antennas to go up on towers. So why don't we start selling drones that fly around towers, taking pictures of antennas on towers? Because why not, right? Because we're so good at this, why won't we be good at that, right? And then we said, why don't we start doing that in the United States? And right. And then we said, hey, why don't we start another division putting the antennas on the towers and, climbing the towers and flying the drones, right? So service company. And so we grew from 4 people to 80 people, and everything was fine. But what ended up happening was that, myself and my business partner, we were managing the core business, and we brought in other people. And I also have a book. In the book, there's some rules that I follow, and one of them is sort of the Midas touch, or the lack of Midas touch. Just because you're Midas touching over this but ignoring that doesn't mean that's going to automatically work better, right? And so these divisions were not doing well, and we were kind of fooling ourselves. We were making so much money in these other divisions that we were basically funding their failure and just choosing to ignore it, right? We said, oh, it'll come, they'll get better. Then 2019 came along, and it was the first time that we were going to lose money, but it wasn't like we were going to lose money. We were going to lose $1.4 million. And, my partner and I, Mark, our houses were on the line, and the bank came to us and said, okay, well, you need to refund the business. Either give us your house or put more money in the business or whatever, because you're upside down on your covenants for the line of credit, right? And so that was where this whole taking action during uncertainty, the first time it came along. And I basically shifted my focus on a weekend. On a Monday morning, I came into my business partner and I said, we have 80 people. By noon, we're going to have 29 people. We're closing the U.S. We're selling our service division. We're shutting down the drones. And by noon, we fired everybody. And the service division, we already knew we could sell it to a company. And we made them, and we said we didn't really fire those people. We knew we were going to sell them. And so 40 of the 80, went in one fell swoop, but we knew it was going to happen. And the rest of them, we let them all go. And the lesson for me mostly, and the next year we made record profits, by the way. So there's a lot of moving parts in the middle. But the thing was, most people wouldn't go to work, wouldn't go home worrying on Friday, come in on Monday and fire all those people, right? And my partner said to me, he said, not only would I have never done it, but I never would have thought of doing it, right? So that's the key, right? And is most people don't even think of these things, let alone do them, right? And every single one of those people landed on their feet. We did a favor for both of us, because we would have gone out of business and none of us would have had a job, right? And so that's, you know, that's one of the examples of what we've done, right? You know, the other thing that you know, during the uncertain times is you have to step back and you have to say to yourself, what are you going to want your business to look like? And you know, people always ask me, like, how do you figure out what you're going to do here, there, or whatever? I go, I don't figure out any of that. I just figure out what it's going to look like, you know, a year from now, and everything else figures itself out in the, you know, start with the end in mind, you know, like Stephen Covey says, right? And it really is the secret to, and most people, the problem is when you explain your ideas to a lot of people, they think you're insane, right? Like, and, you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, or whatever. And they're like, well, how do we get from here to there? It doesn't matter. Just you got to decide on a course of action. If I'm going to go to, you know, if I want to fly to China or whatever, right? Like the plane's not going in a straight line, right? It's going to go like this, but then we get there. And the only thing that's known is you're starting in Toronto and you're ending up in China, right? And so you just need to create a vision of where you want to be, and you have to commit to that and share the vision with everyone, and then everyone will follow in lockstep with you. So obviously then you make the commitment to do it and take steps. Like hollow promises, hollow things, that you'll quickly lose the respect of your staff. And so you don't want to be, you know, you don't want to be sharing things before you know you can commit to taking the action. But once you do, you make the resolution, and then you want to take the action, right? These are some of the other, you know, the other points behind it. I mean, you obviously need to tell the reasons why, and you know, you need to make these changes part of your everyday, right? It's not going to happen automatically, right? You have to take the next right step. And so someone asked me recently, like how do I be successful in the face of all of the other people in the room? Like, you know, like for instance, like a salesperson or someone like that. Like, how do I get to be so much better than them? I said, well, you don't really need to be better than them. You just need to be a microcosm, like a tiny bit better, like 1 millimeter better than them. Because as long as you're at least 1 millimeter better than the guy behind you, you're better, right? And so most people think, well, I have to be way better, right? I have to be twice as good, you know, I have to be 10 times as good. No, you just need to be 1% better than the guy standing beside you. And so you know, one of the rules, again, from my book is you only get forever to make another impression, right? And everyone's like, wait a minute, that's not the same. My mother said, it's like, make a good first impression, right? I go, yeah, obviously you want to make a good first impression, and a second one, and a third one, and a fourth one, and a fifth one. And so the story I tell is, you know, when you're sitting at your desk and maybe it's slow or whatever, and you hear footsteps, you hear the owner's car pull in the driveway or whatever, you hear him walking down the hall, you hear your boss, your supervisor, whatever, make sure when they walk by your desk, you're in power mode. Don't be alt-tabbing from Instagram or Facebook over to the Salesforce and, you know, pretend you're working or whatever, because in 1 nanosecond, they're going to see that and they're going to think you're lazy. And you just made an impression. And then they're going to see it a second time, and then they're going, that person's just lazy. That's all they'll think about you, right? But if every time your boss walks by, you say, hey, do you have a second? I want a question. You know, I'm working on this deal with so-and-so and whatever. And really, you're just humble bragging is what you're really doing. But they're the people that they'll remember you versus everyone else. Well, that guy's always on Facebook, and this person's always on point, right? And so I find that it's an important rule to always remember that no matter what you're doing, you're always making an impression. So make it a good impression, right? And you know, and obviously raise your standards. And Brad said something about you're an asshole or whatever. Like the guy said, or no, he said no. That was the thing. He said you're a tyrant.
That was you.
Yes. So when I started the new company, you know, there was a goal that I wanted. You know, the mantra of the business, unwritten, it's not part of the vision statement or the core values or anything like that. But the core tenet of the business was always be a pleasure to do business with. always. Even when you don't want to be a pleasure to do business, always be a pleasure to do business with. And so, and you know, we have a person that went from being, you know, sort of a clerk to a senior clerk to inside sales to outside sales to a fucking asshole. That's the progression, right? Star, 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 asshole, right? And we had to rattle the candor and say, look, you've gone from being one of our favorite people to a total jerk. No one likes you, right? Like, people don't even want to sit in the room and have lunch with you. Like you know, like the success has gone to your head or whatever, and you're not a pleasure to do business with, and you're not making our company a pleasure to do business with. It's not how we're put together. So it's, you want everyone on the phone, and like for instance, one of the things we have at our company is you know, have that like 000 thing. So you know, where you call a company and you don't want to talk, you don't want to talk to the automated attendant, so you pick up the phone as soon as the automated, you go 0000000, right? And has anyone ever done that? Because they want to get by the auto attendant? That comes straight to me. And they're like, oh, I don't want your auto attendant. I said, well, I'm the owner, so how can I help you? And they're like, well, I got the owner. And believe me, they remember that later, right? And I always try to help them, and I always answer the phone. You know, I learned that the hard way, right? So one of the other rules I'll share from my book that was, it's called I think it's called The Biggest Mistake, but essentially years ago, a guy was talking to me and I was explaining something to him or whatever. I said, hey, if you have any questions, just give me a call. And he laughed at me, right? And I'm like, why are you laughing? And he's like, well, I'm like, why are you laughing? Like, what's so funny? And he goes, well, I guess you don't know the joke. I go, what joke? Like, and he didn't want to tell me, right? And I said, come on, just tell me, what are you talking about, right? And he said, well, it's the standing joke. Like, that's the joke. Like, give me a call, meaning me, because I'm never going to answer the phone and I'm never going to call you back. I'm not going to listen to your voicemail. So unless you literally find me in the hallway, you're not going to get a hold of me. Because I had reasons for it. I was, you know, going through problems. I was divorced, and, you know, it was a bunch of things. And I mean, those are my excuses that I'm attaching to the file. But those were the reasons why I was like shutting down, and I wasn't my old self. Always, you know, I wasn't answering the phone. I wasn't returning voicemails or whatever. And I became the joke, where it's like, oh, just give me a call, right? Like, meaning you're never getting an answer, right? And I vowed that in my new company, because it wasn't that long between when that company closed down and I started the new company, that stayed with me. I said, I'm always going to answer the phone. When you call our company, someone live's going to pick it up for you, right? We're a lot so big now that we have to have an attendant that gets you to the main departments, but somebody in those departments will pick it up, and if they don't, I'll pick it up. And when it rings my phone, it rings my cell phone too, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I pick up the phone. So, yeah, the rituals and stuff, and yeah, I mean, obviously, if you want to be measuring your goals. Everyone's heard of SMART, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with the time frame, right? That's the standard thing. But this really changed our business. Was when we fired all those people in 2019, we put in an operating system called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. You can Google it. It's very popular. There's almost 9,000 companies around the world that operate on it, and it's a systematic method for running and setting up your business, especially small to medium-sized businesses. And it helps you put the processes, set the the structure, and then putting the right people in the structure, not starting with the people and the structure later, which is the mistakes that people were making before. Like, okay, so you're in the room. Okay, so you're the VP of finance, and you can be VP of sales. Okay, you're VP of quality. Like, seriously, and I've seen it many times with people, right? You know, the vice president in the room syndrome, and so a big part of their system is the SMART. We set 7-day, 90-day, 1 year, 3 year, and 10-year goals, and we meet this Friday. It's our quarterly, so we meet for a full day, and we have a facilitator guy that comes in from EOS, and he helps us to set and measure the goals. And every goal we set, every 90-day goal we set, has to be specific. It has to be SMART. We have to say, in 90 days, when you tell me whether it's done or not done, what does done look like? It means I'm going to do this, this, you know, and everyone, and they're called rocks. And so, yeah. So, and of course, yeah, adjust your course, and that's how you can contact me. So, and there's the book, Never Sit in the Lobby. My book, it's about selling, staying in front of the customer, not pissing them off when you're there, and how to get invited back, right? And yeah, so thanks.